Welcome to the Red White News Show with Dean McMurray, the military medium.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another great episode of the Red, White, and You Show with yours truly, the military medium. Well, folks, today I have with me a gentleman by the name of Dan Hudson. Dan is a 25-year law enforcement officer, did some time in the Air Force. He has many accommodations and awards to his name, not only through the military, but through through work. But he recently wrote a book called PTS Me. And he's here today to talk about all that and all things trauma. Dan, welcome to the Red, White News Show, man.
Hey, Dee, thanks for having me, and thank you for all you do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So share with us a little bit, the listeners and the viewers, a little bit who Dan Hudson is and how you got, I guess, from, you know, kind of in the start of everything. How did this book come about?
Well, I tell you what, Dan Hudson is a small town North Dakota guy from Colfax, North Dakota that grew up on a farm. So I think there were 13 people in my high school class, which I was probably number 13, as you can imagine. So I was real fortunate to grow up in a small town and be a North Dakotan. But with that, going to college my first 2 years, you run out of money, basically. So I saw an opportunity with the North Dakota Air National Guard, and they took exceptional care of me, went to the basic, and was able to complete my bachelor's at NDSU. Kind of fell in love with the notion of law enforcement or law school, one of the two options. And well, to be quite honest, I was sick of school. I was ready to get out and work for it. So it was interesting to me. So with the GI Bill and the benefits, I was fortunate enough to go to a police academy and get hired with the Fargo Police Department, actually. I worked there for some time and quite competitive and really some amazing people and amazing experiences. And that's how it all began. So my family farmed and I became a law enforcement officer.
You kind of broke the mold on the cycle there.
I always tell my dad and my brother I didn't have what it took. There's too many facets to that. So.
Well, hats off certainly to the farmers, because that is certainly anybody that grew up in a farm family or knows farmers. It's certainly not an easy life to do what they do, and but thank you for your service as you continually serve as a law enforcement officer, but not only that, but time in the Air Guard, and we always appreciate that, obviously. So how did you? So I didn't mention this, but in your bio, I was seeing stuff about poetry and other things, and so was literature or that aspect, was that always kind of coursing through your veins, so to speak, as far as like a pull for you?
It was. And one of the things that really spurred it, I came across it about a year ago. I was sitting in church with my grandparents. I wasn't paying much attention as usual. And I took a Burger King piece of paper and I wrote a poem on it. And I think it was to my grandmother, Adeline, and it said, "My love for you is like a rose, it grows and grows and grows." And I wrote it in pencil and I can barely read it. Well, when she passed, I found that she had that laminated and she kept it. And I mean, like, wow. So about the 7th grade, I came to my father and I said, "Dad, I got a cash flow problem." And he laughed, and he was reading some agricultural magazine, and he handed it to me. He goes, "Well, here's a writing contest. Do something about it." And I wrote, and I won. Cash flow problem solved temporarily. And from that, I really, it's something that I feel has come naturally for me. There's a lot of things I wish did, but this one does. And I never really thought about writing a book. Some of the, in the military, law enforcement, I think almost every soldier, officer, maybe even paramedic or firefighter could write a book.
Right.
just based on what they see. And the premise of the book came about actually from my brother Tim, where he said, well, I approached him. I said, I'm thinking about writing a book. I'm going to do it really lighthearted and talk about some of these funny stories. And I'm going to get with my colleagues from the paramedics that I've known, the firefighters, even emergency room personnel. And we're going to tell just these funny stories, try and humanize us. And maybe it'll be good for us. And he goes, well, have you thought about it 3 times? I go, yeah. He goes, well, then you got to do it. So that's the rule. That apparently is the rule.
Okay.
But so I solicited friends, colleagues, and they're like, this is a terrific idea. And it came from a book when I was at NDSU called The Thin Blue Line, where it was basically a compilation of stories. So I wasn't reinventing the wheel. I was just updating it. And I never got any. And I could never figure out why. So I would reach back out and like, yep, I'll get it to you. And never received a one. And after I started writing this book, I didn't want it to be necessarily about me, but it became about me. And after I started writing it, I completely understood why I never got a story. And it was a very intimate process. And some of the things that happened to me as a law enforcement officer, it really did affect my personal life. It affected everything. And I didn't even realize it. And it caused reflection. And it almost takes hitting rock bottom to realize it. And this was part of the healing process. So it was never about selling a book. It was about, hey, I'm going to write this, and I would feel better after I'd write. And then I just kept writing and writing and writing, and had to cut some stuff out because we'd still be writing, I suppose. But it's amazing. It was an amazing process, and a lot of support from my wife, Angie, and my son, Jackson, and my whole family.
Well, that's really awesome. Now, one of the things that's interesting is a lot of times on the show, obviously we have folks from the military or, prior military and of course, law enforcement, fire, everybody and every niche, if you will. But, it's interesting when we talk about trauma, when we talk about people going through trauma or PTS or PTSD, whatever you want to call it, everybody's mind typically goes to, oh, that's a military issue. But that's not true. Doesn't matter what color uniform you're wearing, or even if you don't wear a uniform, you can experience this. And so interesting dynamic, because so many more, and people are not talking about this, correct? Not enough, I should say. Not enough about the staggering, if we thought the numbers of suicides and people that were struggling in the military were crazy, nobody's talking about the law enforcement and first responder folks.
You're absolutely 100% on point with this. I mean, just this morning I was going through some statistics from officer.com, and we have more law enforcement officers taking their lives than unfortunately being involved in fatalities, otherwise job related. And if you extrapolate even 22 a day in the military, we're talking over 8,000 soldiers. It's unacceptable. And I had to do something. I was compelled. I had to do something. And this is the only thing I really knew how to do.
Sure.
And what really motivated it was some very close friends of mine that were first responders that, they succumbed to their demons and they did take their own life. And I don't want to say it was motivation, but I know if they were here today, they'd be like, yeah, get the message out, because that's what they did. I mean, they dedicated their lives to the community they lived in, to their families. And it seems hypocritical when it comes to suicide, when you dedicate your life to your family and you take your life. And that's what PTSD from my experience, can do. It can cause a delusion of things that, maybe aren't necessarily the truth or real. And it's terrifying and it's deadly. And I want to stop it.
Right.
And I'm not going to stop till we do stop it.
Did you find that you walked your own similar journey with some of the traumas, with some of the stuff that you were experiencing on the job? And I know you shared that, you were struggling with some stuff, but
right.
That you found healing in the writing. But, would you be comfortable with sharing some of that a little bit more, delving a little bit more into the book, so to speak?
Oh, absolutely. And the book is I said if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it so people can see. And I guess it's a book of association. It's like, hey, if you see some of these traits, this may be what's going on. Not necessarily exactly what's going on, because it doesn't happen with everyone. But you said earlier, Dean, that it doesn't even matter if you wear a uniform. And we talked about farmers and producers. They're going through a horribly tough time right now. And I'm concerned. And I've brought this up to numerous producers that I know growing up on a farm, even my friends that are farming. But for me, I didn't know what was happening right away. And that's the terrifying part. And the idea behind some of the education and training and my journey, the goal is for not only your family, but your coworkers or maybe even supervisors to maybe see some of these signs. And it may be just a handshake or a hug, or it may be even just to sit and have a cup of coffee or whatever you do and talk some stuff out, because it tends to build and it doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
And when you start as an officer as long ago as I did, about 10,000 years ago, there's been a dynamic. There's been a dynamic. I'm wearing my old dye glasses.
I was going to say 10,000 years ago. It's
But there's been a dynamic shift, and I think
right.
we've turned the corner on the stigma of this, battle fatigue, like they used to call it, where
sure.
if there's a balloon that pops, everybody's going to dive under a table. Oh, quite the opposite. From my experience, these are the people that are going to run directly at danger to stop it, and they're just going to do it because that's who they are. So for me, that compounds if you don't work through it. You will remember it, and the people that have read my book so far have said, it explains a lot about my grandfather, I'll hear stories all day long. My grandfather was in World War II, and he gets so angry. And my personal journey is I was starting to get some physical signs that I was not sleeping. I would sleep. I'd have the same dreams over and over. I couldn't remember things I did 5 minutes ago, but I could remember something I did 20 years ago. And it was starting to get terrifying, and my moods were horrible, mainly because of sleep and, these thoughts. And it came to a head one day, and it had nothing to do with law enforcement, what we were doing. But we were down in Minneapolis, and a friend of ours was running a marathon, and I was having a bad day. And I didn't want to be there, and I don't like running anyway. I was in the Air Force. We don't like to do that. We drive the car. No, I'm kidding. There's a lot of grief. But I was having a terrible day, and I wasn't talking to anybody. And I was, I had lived a life of isolation. I didn't go out. I didn't want to go to parties, concerts, anything. Just leave me alone. Let me do my job. I was focused on work. And on the way home, I spoke to my wife, who is an angel. She listened to me, and we spoke all the way from Wisconsin all the way to where we live now, which is about a 3.5 hour drive. And we decided it was time to find out what was going on together. And that was where I was really fortunate, where some people may not be. I had a very, very good support mechanism in my wife. I mean, still do, because it never goes away. You just learn. You learn about triggers. You learn about how to deal with these things and stay on top of them. Basically, you take these demons that have been haunting you for years, and they're going to be there, but now they work for you. And what I've learned is the best way to maybe not defeat trauma, as ugly as it can be, is to turn it into something absolutely beautiful. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Nice. You mentioned something that was I want to draw a correlation to, and you were saying that, obviously the trauma aspect, you don't need to be wearing a uniform to struggle with PTS or any type of trauma, regardless, whatever label you slap on it. You mentioned farmers. But let's not forget the families either, right? And we were talking about this before we came live. So, you talk about all the tremendous wives and or husbands or significant others that are helping their loved one through this journey, that they could very possibly be suffering with some form of trauma themselves, and or completely unrelated as far as something happening to them, correct?
Yeah, 100% correct. And that's exactly right. And I think I call them the forgotten, but they're really in the journey of healing from PTSD. They're the real heroes here. And it's almost an embarrassing, it causes a lot of humility, because you look back at some of the behavior perhaps, or maybe you were short-tempered. What I noticed, and going through writing this book, what I really realized was my hyper vigilance was driving everyone nuts. I mean, it was insane. I would have an operational plan to go to the gas station. And if my son was mowing the lawn, I had a level of anxiety and thinking about a million things that could go wrong. Well, if the mower blows up, or if it rolls, looking back now and knowing the tools to deal with this, I'm not going to say it's silly, but it's like, that's where I use the word delusional. It's not real. And it's a hard thing to look at, and like, the possibility of that happening is almost nil. I mean, the mower's not going to explode and take out half the block. So I'm not going to say get back to reality, but it's a thought process. It's like, there's still good in the world. Not everyone is evil. Matter of fact, there's more good. We hear a lot from a lot of outlets about all the bad things. Well, give me a good news story, because I honestly still believe there's more good in this world than that, but you wouldn't think so.
And I'm sure you still see that as a police officer today. A lot of, of course you deal with a lot of things that are not pleasant, but on the same time, you get to deal with a lot of things that are as well, I'm sure.
Right. And so when I started writing this book, I didn't want it to be doom and gloom, because we hear doom and gloom, like I just said, all the time. So I did start it with a little bit of my childhood and some of the things that happened to be in my childhood, and some of the shenanigans that we used to pull growing up in the middle of nowhere. We get away with a little bit more. So sure. And when I first took it to a publisher, they wanted all that cut out, and I wasn't doing that. I have to. And it's really become one of the more commented and popular parts of the book. So, and for many generations, from World War II veterans to Vietnam veterans, and even individuals who've never served, that's really what it's for. And that was the idea, and we spoke about that. It's like, you don't have to wear a uniform for this to happen. It could be everybody's trauma is different, and you can't measure it. There's some similarities, but it's different.
Right. No, absolutely. Well said. So when you're looking at the book or going through the book, when was that published, Dan?
A year and a half ago.
I think we're having audio visual problems.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah,
hey, I'm back. It was about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
That I published it, and you had mentioned poetry. I love music, and we discussed the poem that I wrote my grandmother. That was also very therapeutic. So they published about the same time. So I did publish a small book of poetry as well.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yes.
And what's that called?
It's called Meoetry.
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 And where can you find this Meoetry? Is that Amazon, or is that
It is. Both are on Amazon, and it's really I joined an organization called the Public Safety Writers Association, and they have a contest. So their first poem in the book got second in their national contest, and it's military poems, first responder. They're not all, again, doom and gloom, and some have nothing to do with law enforcement or the military or first responders at all. It's just my random ramblings with photos.
Well, looking over and just listening to you too, you would if you wouldn't tell somebody that you went into law enforcement, somebody would maybe draw a correlation to you working in the arts, because talking about poetry and music and everything else, I love that aspect. The thing that the piece, I was looking at your hobbies, and I know you were mentioning this as well, but one of the things that you really get into is refurbishing guitars.
I do. I love it.
Do you find that therapeutic?
It's completely therapeutic. And the Veterans Administration in Fargo is terrific. And they are doing so many different things than many other facilities. And writing therapy, for those who can't go through talk type therapy, the writing therapy has been very popular. Music therapy. There's so many different types and proven benefits to it. I mean, you can Google music therapy for veterans, you'll see article after article of success and the hundreds of organizations, songwriting with soldiers. So what I did after I completed one of their programs is Dr. Margot Norton is just spearheading and is so dedicated to veterans in our community. She spearheaded this program called, it was about a year, well, COVID, we couldn't have a program this year, but we started a program called Healing Warriors. And that's where I actually read that poem. And all the community leaders with our Moorhead State was gracious enough to host. And it was poetry, stories, pictures, photographs, masks that people would make. They'd take plaster and put on their face, and they would paint exactly. It was absolutely incredible. It was a packed house. Mayors, community leaders were all there. And like, hey, this was terrific. Let's grow it. And then, of course, the pandemic came in, which prohibited this year. But it actually allowed us to grow as an organization to something called Healing Warriors.
Nice.
And we exist. And we kind of divided up, and I got the music portion. So it's always been part of my life. It's been an important part. My dad and I both play guitar. We have matching ones. He's much better than I am, but he's listening, so I have to. It's a bond that we have. We play guitar. My grandmother played piano. My sister. The whole family has always been into music, and it's been a bond of ours. And it's kind of ironic, but. We've noticed, and we acknowledge the benefits of music. So basically the premise of that is individuals going through a writing therapy, and it's voluntary, can provide me a poem, a writing, and we'll try and convert it in a song and match them up with a songwriter, and we'll try and make a song out of it.
Very cool.
And we have a success story with it, with the first one. And that song has been produced and should be released in the next couple months.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Now, is that produced locally, or is that on a national level?
That is on a national level. It when I received this poem, it felt like getting punched in the stomach. And I read it about 4 times, and I interacted with the veteran, and we went back and forth. And out of nowhere, I just put it on Facebook. I'm like, hey, can someone help with this? Because I can play music, I can write songs. I have a real tough time coming up with a melody, and I am not your guy for that. But I can probably find someone who can. And it just happened to be a national act. We had a mutual friend, and this singer is a Mission 22 ambassador. her husband's a Mission 22 ambassador, a current officer in the Space Force, and she is outstanding. And she took this project and just ran with it. And I cannot give her enough thanks. And I have to be a little careful because all the legal stuff that's going, they got to get their duckies in a row, but I'm really looking forward to hearing it. And I just did the arrangement, and and it's been so rewarding. And all of a sudden I've got emails of poems, and
that's really cool. And you'll have to share when that, when it gets published or whatever, if you're able to share that song, we'll certainly post it on the Red, White, and You Facebook page and Instagram, all that great stuff. So just another platform to share that. I think that's just a great. And how would somebody, if they're like, oh my God, that sounds really cool, how did they get involved with that? Is that...
You know what? They can reach out to me on my Facebook page. It's called the DT Hudson Writing Company. They can reach out to me. They can send me an email. I don't have a problem with sharing my email. I've had to do it that way because I'm not gonna. I want to be available. I'm not a mental health expert, but I know some, and it's the whole goal. Reach out, and if they want to do a songwriting thing, or if a musician is interested in participating in this, I am completely open. And you'd be surprised. We have genres from rap, country, folk, and I'm a metalhead from the late '80s. So everything I've tried to write comes out country. I don't know why.
I love it. I love it.
I wish it's okay, but it's really. I've really started to appreciate every genre because it's really the words that come out. And when it's to music, there's no language barrier. It doesn't matter where you are, who you are. Yeah. It's a terrific tool. I just gave a song to a former colleague of mine from the police department who's no longer there. He's a great musician, and he goes, this is terrific. I mean, everybody wins, and that's cool.
Nice. Sweet. So if they're looking to connect, how do they do that?
They could just go to the DT Hudson Writing Facebook page and just send me a message, and we'll connect from there. We can exchange info, and if they're interested, we're always looking for musicians and songwriters. And I think even if it's just one, it's the veteran and the songwriter can meet if they want. They don't have to. I can be the intermediary. We keep it as simple and as easy as possible. And sometimes the veteran doesn't even want their name on it. And we're very, very careful with the veteran's work because it's their song. It really is their song. And it's their words, it's their feelings. And I don't change anything without them looking at it. It can be challenging at times. But it has also been an amazing process because I will sit down with the veteran if they'd like to meet. And then all of a sudden they'll tell me more. And it's like, you know what, you've got so much more here. What about this? And it's all of a sudden you have this beautiful story beginning. That's so awesome. It's so good for me. I love it. It is a passion.
You guys are doing something which is very similar to what a group of songwriters and musicians are doing out in Nashville, and it's very, very similar. I can't even remember the name of it. Warrior. I don't know. And where basically they do the same thing. It's just really cool to hear because it's taking a love of something, and you're finding a way to bring healing through it. And so I just think that's so cool. And just, of course, really just, applauding you guys' efforts, because understanding that number one, it's not easy to get that stuff off the ground, but number two, just, the want to do it. So I just
want and almost need. And once you start the process, of it. You know, it's always a little bumpy, but you know, what's worth doing that isn't a little bumpy at first?
Right.
And it's amazing. Where for me, I'm so fortunate. I get to meet a lot of these people. I get to sit down with some of my Vietnam veteran colleagues, and here I didn't get to. I wasn't alive. I mean, I was very small, very young, and it's a time I don't remember.
Right.
And to hear that and what they sacrificed for me, and one of the big topics is when they came home. And I told one Vietnam vet the other day that provided me some stuff. I go, do you realize what you went through when you got home created an avenue? I came home to a hero's welcome. And we just sat in silence and stared at each other for a while. And all I could say was, so thank you. I mean, it was a different time and a different situation. And
yeah,
but it's a bond that you create, and I can't even describe it. You know, it's a friendship.
Right.
It really is, and it's an understanding and respect that I completely respect you, and it's amazing, and it's a gift.
That's really cool. Well, my friend, do you have is there anything else that you wanted to plug? Anything else that you wanted to bring up before we close out our interview?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, and again, thanks for what you do. It does make a difference, and it gives the voice out there. With all this going on, I felt compelled, and after speaking with my wife, we always want to grant right and raise funds, and we have to have the vehicle. So after some discussion, we decided to start a marriage with the Warriors of the North, and we started a nonprofit that should be up and running here, hopefully sooner than later, depending on how fast the wheels of the government work.
Sure.
So it's going to be called Operation Check 6. And that term in the military that the military folks probably all know is watch your back and watch your partner's back. And it was said to me 3 times prior to our deployment by our commander, check 6, check 6, check 6. And I'm like, how appropriate. Kind of came to me when I woke up one morning. I couldn't get it out of my head. So 3 times. Just
there
like
you go. 3 times. The 3-time rule, Dan.
That's right.
3-time rule. So
I want to break it.
Well, that is so awesome. And now, is this the first time that you're publicly announcing that?
It is. I mean, right on your show here, the first time I'm publicly announcing it. And
wow.
You know, we'll just let it grow. I mean, we'll just let it grow. We'll just let it do
well,
its
and hopefully by the time this airs now, because when your episode airs, of course, here we are in March, but your episode won't be airing till in summer. So hopefully by that time there will be something. So, go out and check it. Maybe Google Check 6 and see what's out there. And certainly on the show, by the time, if there is the organization has been stood up by that time, we're going to certainly have the links and of course everything for that you guys are supporting, everything that's affiliated with you guys, because number one, it's the right thing to do. Number two, it's I just love the fact that what you're doing, Dan. Currently still serving, but yet serving in a different capacity. I gotta ask, because obviously, you're getting long in the tooth, so to speak, for law enforcement terms. Do you see yourself maybe in another 5 years retiring, 5-6 years from the law enforcement community, and then doing this full time and in some capacity, working for the nonprofit or doing something else?
It's funny you say 5 years. That's exactly what it is. And
must be psychic.
Yeah. So absolutely. I mean, what greater retirement gig than to be playing music and having fun and making people smile and get back to the people that they once were. Get back to caring and loving and not living in a box and telling someone that you love them and mean it. Right.
And they're not alone, right? So
they're not alone. They're never
in this
alone.
walk with whatever it is that they're dealing with. So and that's the most beautiful thing to let folks know, regardless of where they are, that they aren't alone. They're not the only ones going through it. So, well, my guest today, Dan Hudson, author of My PTS Me. But you also have, before we go, with that book, there's the website as well, right? www.myptsme.com.
Correct.
And so if they want to order the book, and they also can do it on Amazon as well.
Yep. So it's on Amazon either way. Amazon's probably your faster turnaround.
Okay.
But yep, absolutely. Amazon has it available. They have both books available, actually, if you're into poetry. And there's a silhouette picture of me on an Up Armor Humvee on the front. You can't tell it's me, but it was a beautiful picture somebody took, and they sent it to me, and I kept it. So
beautiful.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Dan. Thank you for being on the show, and certainly thank you for what you continue to do for not only veterans, but everybody out there. Keep on shining the light, my friend.
All right. Thank you, Dean. Thank you for all you do.